Stop for a moment and imagine this money moving toward you effortlessly. Clients, opportunities, ideas, all gravitating as if pulled by an invisible force. What if that force is you? What if wealth has been waiting for you to activate the formula hidden inside your own consciousness? Today you'll discover the hidden money formula, an inner law that reshapes your reality from the inside out. Once you understand how to assume the state of wealth, money stops being something you chase and becomes something that responds to you. This is where the shift begins. The formula begins at the level most people overlook, who you believe yourself to be. Wealth is not attracted by effort alone. It gravitates toward the identity you consistently occupy. Every result in your life springs from the state of consciousness you live in, and money is no exception. When you seek wealth from a mindset of lack or unworthiness, the very seeking reinforces the idea that you are separate from what you want. But when you begin to inhabit the self that is already financially secure, already confident, already aligned with abundance, everything around you reorganizes to match that inner truth. Identity is not a surface-level concept. It is the deep, automatic sense of self that shapes every decision, reaction, and expectation. You cannot outwork a self-concept that feels poor. You cannot out-strategize a belief system that quietly insists money is hard, scarce, or out of reach. Your subconscious will always pull you back to the identity you have accepted as normal. And this is why the inner assumption of abundance is so powerful. The moment you shift who you are in consciousness, you shift what you allow in your reality. Life cannot deliver beyond the limits of the identity you are loyal to. Consider how effortlessly you live from your current identity. You do not remind yourself of your name, your personality, or your capabilities. You simply accept them as true and move from that acceptance. In the same way, when you adopt the identity of being financially empowered, you do not force yourself to think wealthy thoughts. They become natural. You do not push yourself to make bold moves. They arise organically. The identity creates the behavior, not the other way around. When you become the one who has, actions taken from that place carry a different frequency. They are infused with confidence, expectation, and conviction, and those qualities magnetize results. Most people make the mistake of trying to achieve wealth while maintaining an identity rooted in scarcity. They try to think positively, but beneath the surface still feel unworthy or unsure. They chase opportunities with desperation instead of certainty. They work harder but continue to expect the same limited outcomes. Nothing changes because the inner generator remains the same. The identity they are loyal to does not support the level of abundance they desire. The world is simply reflecting the inner position they have not yet replaced. To shift your identity, you begin with imagination and feeling. You enter the version of yourself who is already wealthy, not in a distant future, but in the only place that has real creative power now. You feel what it is like to wake up financially free, to make decisions from overflow rather than fear, to walk through the world knowing money flows to you with ease. You dwell in this version of yourself until it becomes familiar. The goal is not to escape into fantasy, but to impress upon your subconscious a new foundation of truth. Once impressed, the subconscious begins producing thoughts, impulses, and opportunities that align with that identity. As you stabilize this inner identity, you will notice shifts in your emotional responses. Doubt softens, fear loosens, old triggers lose their grip. Situations that once felt overwhelming begin to feel manageable. You start responding to life from a place of strength rather than survival. This emotional shift is evidence that the identity is taking root. When you feel differently about money, you behave differently with money. And when your behavior aligns with abundance, external circumstances transform to confirm your new state. Identity also determines what you expect from the world. Expectations are silent instructions you give to life, and life always honors them. A person who identifies as financially struggling expects setbacks, delays, and resistance. They anticipate disappointment and thus they find it. But a person who identifies as wealthy expects opportunities, solutions, and expansion. They anticipate favorable outcomes, and therefore reality shows up in their favor. Expectation is the natural byproduct of identity. When you become the version of yourself who is rich in consciousness, expecting wealth becomes effortless, even automatic. This is not about pretending. It is about choosing the blueprint from which your life is constructed. Your identity is the mold, and money is one of the many substances that fills it. Change the mold and the form must change. The moment you stop seeing yourself as someone trying to attain wealth and begin seeing yourself as someone to whom wealth flows, the magnetism activates. Circumstances you once thought were coincidences begin appearing with consistency. The right people show up. The right ideas arrive. The right opportunities unfold. These are not accidental. They are the external confirmation of your internal shift. You are never trying to become wealthy. You are remembering and embodying the version of yourself who already is. When this identity becomes your dominant state, your unquestioned assumption, life mirrors it faithfully. Money aligns with the identity that claims it. Opportunities respond to the identity that expects them. Abundance flows to the identity that welcomes it. Everything begins within, and everything follows the pattern you establish in consciousness. Identity is the generator, and once you command it deliberately, your entire financial world transforms. Assuming the state before any evidence appears means stepping into the reality you desire with full inner conviction, even when the world around you shows no signs of change. It requires the courage to believe in the unseen more than the visible, to trust the inner cause rather than the outer effect. This principle is often misunderstood as wishful thinking or self-delusion. Yet it is the opposite. It is the deliberate act of shaping your life from the level where all creation begins consciousness. When you assume the state of wealth, abundance, or financial ease before any physical manifestation occurs, you send a command to your inner world, and that command becomes the blueprint that reality must eventually follow. To accept the end result without proof is to recognize that your imagination is not inferior to the physical world, it is superior. The physical environment is simply the echo of previous assumptions you once held. Every circumstance you see today was once an inner state you accepted as true, whether consciously or unconsciously. Therefore, waiting for evidence before adopting a new belief is backward. Evidence is always delayed because the outer world can only rearrange itself after the inner state has stabilized. This is why assuming the state of financial abundance before evidence appears is not merely helpful. It is necessary. It sets the law into motion. Dwelling in the state means living from the feeling of the desired outcome. It is not a single moment of visualization or an occasional affirmation. It is a sustained consciousness. It is the quiet knowing that wealth belongs to you, that money flows to you naturally, that opportunities recognize you. When you dwell in this state consistently, you impress it upon the subconscious, and the subconscious is the creative engine of your life. It does not question, analyze, or doubt. It accepts whatever is felt deeply and repeatedly, and then expresses it through circumstances, events, and encounters. The world around you begins to shift because the world within you has already moved. This process is not about pretending. Pretending implies that you know the truth, but are temporarily acting otherwise. Assuming the state means you accept a deeper truth than what your senses currently report. You no longer entertain the contradicting evidence because you understand it is old, outdated, and irrelevant to the reality you are now giving life to. The senses only reveal the past, assumption reveals the future. When you assume the state of financial abundance, you are not imagining what could be. You are aligning with what is already true in the unseen dimension of your being. The challenge is that the mind is conditioned to believe only what it can measure, see, and verify. But the power that shapes reality does not reside in the measurable, it resides in the imaginal. To break free from the limitations of the visible world, you must temporarily ignore it. Not resist it, not fight it, but simply disregard it as incomplete information. When a gardener plants a seed, they do not dig it up every few hours to check whether it is growing. They trust the unseen process. They water it, give it light, and wait with calm expectancy. Assuming the state is the same, you plant the seed of wealth within, nurture it with feeling, and allow the unseen forces to bring it into form. As you persist in the assumption, something remarkable happens. You begin to feel differently about money. Fear dissolves. Urgency fades. The emotional grip of lack weakens. You stop chasing opportunities and start drawing them. You stop trying to make things happen and start noticing how naturally things unfold. Internal conflict is replaced with internal certainty. People around you may not understand why you are so calm, why you feel so stable, why you speak with such assurance when nothing in the physical world justifies it. But that inner certainty is the very thing that causes the physical world to shift. Eventually, the world begins to reorganize itself. This is the stage many describe as coincidences, synchronicities, or unexpected blessings. But in truth, these events are the natural outflow of the assumption you maintained. Emails appear, clients reach out, payments arrive, ideas form, jobs open, solutions present themselves. The world bends to the inner blueprint you created. And when the evidence finally appears, it feels almost anticlimactic, because you experienced the result within long before it took physical shape. You may even notice that the outer manifestation does not surprise you. It feels familiar, expected, almost inevitable. That is the sign you truly assumed the state before evidence appeared. The physical results simply confirmed what you already knew internally. And this is the essence of mastering the money formula, becoming so aligned with the end result within that the external world becomes a predictable reflection rather than a source of uncertainty. Evidence is always the last step, never the first. You do not wait for abundance, you become it. You do not hope for wealth, you embody it. Once the state is assumed, the manifestation must come, because consciousness is the origin of all outcomes. What you accept as true within will always command the world without. Feeling is the true catalyst of every financial transformation, because feeling is what imprints the desired state onto the subconscious mind. You can think about wealth all day, you can say affirmations repeatedly, you can write goals in a journal, but none of it produces a shift until the emotion behind the desire becomes alive within you. It is the emotional charge that sends the instruction. It is the inner sensation that tells your deeper mind, this is who I am now. Once that emotional acceptance is made, the outer world begins rearranging itself with precision to match the internal state you have chosen. To activate the feeling, you begin by letting go of the idea that money is something distant or difficult. Let your body breathe into the experience of having it. When you imagine financial abundance, do not imagine it as a possibility. Imagine it as a present condition. Feel the relief of bills paid, goals funded, opportunities expanding, and the freedom that comes with knowing you can make choices without fear. Relief is often the first doorway, because relief signals to your subconscious that the struggle is over. When the mind senses the end of struggle, it no longer produces resistance, and resistance is what blocks financial flow more than anything else. Next, evoke the feeling of empowerment. Money is not just about numbers, it is about the personal power you reclaim when you no longer feel limited. Feel the strength of someone who is financially supported by life. Feel the grounded confidence of someone who has more than enough. Let that confidence rise through you until it becomes a natural posture. Your shoulders relax, your breath deepens, your thoughts begin to align with certainty rather than doubt. This is the moment the inner shift begins to stabilize. Confidence communicates to your subconscious that wealth is familiar, expected, and appropriate for you. You must allow the body to participate in this shift because emotion is experienced physically. When you feel wealthy, the body relaxes, the chest opens, the stomach unclenches. A calmness spreads through your system. You begin to move, think, and speak like someone who already knows everything is working in their favor. This internal atmosphere is what activates the law. The subconscious does not respond to intellectual recitations. It responds to states of being, and a state of being is nothing more than sustained feeling. As you generate this inner atmosphere, you might notice a soft but powerful inner knowing emerging. It is not dramatic. It is not forced. It is simply a quiet acknowledgement that what you desire is already yours in consciousness. When that knowing arrives, hold it gently. Let it fill you. This knowing becomes the vibrational signature that life responds to. Everything begins shifting in your favor, not because you forced anything, but because you entered the emotional frequency where wealth already exists. Your feelings broadcast instructions to reality, and reality reorganizes itself according to those instructions. A mind that feels abundant will naturally attract situations that match abundance. A heart that feels supported will naturally attract support. A person who feels financially empowered becomes magnetic to opportunities that require and reward empowered action. This is not coincidence, it is coherence between inner state and outer expression. The emotional blueprint you hold becomes the architecture of your financial life. If you hold a blueprint of worry, your world will reflect worry. If you hold a blueprint of delay, you will experience delay. But when you hold a blueprint of calm expectation, wealth begins flowing toward you through channels you may have never imagined. The outer world becomes a mirror, faithfully reflecting your emotional truth. This is why it is essential to practice the feeling of already having what you desire. Not occasionally, not only when convenient, but consistently until it becomes second nature. You do not have to generate intense emotion. You only need to stabilize the feeling of certainty. A soft inner conviction is more potent than forced excitement. Quiet confidence is far more powerful than frantic enthusiasm. What matters is that the feeling becomes your normal. As the feeling stabilizes, you may begin to notice synchronicities, unexpected messages, new opportunities, sudden solutions, or shifts in people around you. These are signs that your emotional blueprint is already shaping your world. You do not need to chase them. You simply acknowledge them as evidence that your internal assumption is unfolding. The more you rest in the feeling, the more these signs multiply. Feeling is the activator because feeling is creation. The moment you feel wealthy, the moment you genuinely embody the emotional state of financial abundance, you have already set the manifestation in motion. The physical world only plays catch up to what you have already become within. When you understand this, you realize you are never waiting on money. Money is always waiting on you to enter the state where its arrival is natural. Cultivate the feeling. Let it expand. Allow it to become the environment within you. Once the emotional atmosphere shifts, everything outside of you must reorganize to match it. That is the power of feeling, and that is the true source of financial transformation. Your imagination becomes the silent construction site where your financial reality is built long before it appears in physical form. When you turn your attention away from the steps and place it fully on the completed result, you step into the role of creator rather than observer. Most people stay trapped in the mechanics, wondering how the money will come, who will bring it, what path will open. But this only strengthens the consciousness of not yet having it. The shift happens the moment you stop thinking in terms of process and begin thinking in terms of fulfillment. You move from hoping to knowing, from wishing to assuming, from effort to embodiment. To imagine only the outcome you want is to give your subconscious a single, clear instruction. The subconscious does not operate through logic or linear planning. It responds to vivid impressions. A short, final scene is more powerful than hours of detailed strategizing because it delivers a complete message without contradiction. Picture the notification of funds received, the feeling of relief washing over you, the inner smile that says, "Of course this happened." Picture the handshake after a successful deal, the gratitude of someone acknowledging your contribution, or the moment you glance at your bank balance and see the exact number you desire. The key is finality. The scene must imply that the wish has already been fulfilled, not that it is on the way, not that it is possible, fulfilled. This inner imagery must be alive, rich with sensory detail, and lit with emotional certainty. When you do this correctly, you will feel a subtle shift in your body, a soft settling into the end state. It may feel like peace, confidence, inevitability. That feeling is the bridge between imagination and manifestation. Once it is established, you no longer need to repeat the scene mechanically. You repeat it until it feels like a memory, not a wish. When it becomes as natural as recalling something that already occurred, the unseen gears begin turning in your favor. Many people sabotage themselves by imagining both what they want and its opposite. They hold the final scene for a moment, but then allow fear, doubt, or logic to paint scenarios of delay or difficulty. The mind becomes conflicted, and the subconscious receives mixed instructions. This dilutes the creative force. To imagine only the outcome you want requires discipline, not effort. Discipline to redirect your attention every time the mind tries to wander back to worry. Discipline to remember that you are not forecasting possibilities, but selecting realities. The outer world cannot contradict the inner one unless you give your attention to two opposing pictures. When you fully inhabit the outcome, the process becomes irrelevant. You stop scanning the world for signs and start experiencing the signs within yourself. The sense of accomplishment, the emotional tone of abundance, the quiet confidence in your decisions, all of these are indicators that the manifestation is already unfolding. Life does not resist clarity, it mirrors it. The clearer your inner scene, the faster the alignment in your outer world. Let the scene be short. A single snapshot carries immense power because it cannot drift into uncertainty. Short scenes are easy to repeat and easy to feel. Perhaps it is you looking at your phone and seeing a payment come through. Perhaps it is you placing your card back into your wallet after making a purchase with complete ease. Perhaps it is a brief moment of someone congratulating you on a financial achievement. The shorter the scene, the more potent the emotional impact. Let it be vivid. The more texture, sound, and feeling you include, the more real it becomes to the subconscious. Hear the tone of the notification, see the numbers clearly, feel the warmth of satisfaction or excitement. The subconscious accepts what feels real, not what is merely thought about abstractly. Vividness accelerates acceptance. Let it be final. Do not imagine yourself wanting money. Imagine yourself having it. Do not imagine yourself trying to close a deal. Imagine it already closed. Do not imagine anticipation. Imagine completion. The finality of the scene is the command. The subconscious takes that command as truth and begins aligning your life accordingly. As you maintain this inner vision, external circumstances begin arranging themselves around your assumption. You may notice new ideas emerging, ideas you did not think of before. You may meet someone unexpectedly who becomes a catalyst. You may feel compelled to take an action that aligns perfectly with the fulfillment of your desire. None of this is coincidence. It is your imagined end pulling the pieces into place. When you occupy the end, you release strain. You stop forcing outcomes and begin flowing with them. Your inner certainty becomes the gravitational field that draws events, people, and resources toward the picture you hold. You will find that solutions appear where you once saw obstacles, and openings appear where you once saw limits. The outer world will reorganize itself with remarkable precision, matching the reality you first crafted within. Your imagined result becomes your lived experience because consciousness is the blueprint from which all physical form emerges. When you choose the outcome and refuse to deviate from that inner picture, you set in motion a sequence of events that must fulfill it. This is not effortful creation. It is deliberate direction of awareness. Your imagination is not a pastime. It is the operating power that shapes your financial destiny. Hold the outcome. Live in it inwardly. Feel it as fact. When you give your mind only one final scene to accept, the world has no choice but to conform to it. Persistence is the quiet force that turns an inner assumption into an outer certainty. It is not dramatic, it is not loud, and it does not seek applause. It simply returns again and again to the inner reality you have chosen, until that inner reality becomes the only one that feels true. Most people never manifest their desires because they treat their imaginal state as a temporary wish instead of a permanent identity. They enter the state briefly, but they do not remain there long enough for it to take root. Persistence is what allows a seed to grow. Without it, the soil is disturbed before anything has a chance to sprout. With it, the subconscious absorbs the new state as its unquestioned truth. Every time you return to the feeling of already having what you desire, you reinforce the mental blueprint that shapes your world. Think of persistence not as repetition, but as stabilization. You are teaching your mind what to expect. You are instructing your inner world on what reality you intend to inhabit. At first, the old state may try to pull you back. Old thoughts, old doubts, old emotional patterns that once felt normal. This is not resistance from the world. It is simply the residue of past assumptions dissolving. Persistence dissolves them completely because the mind cannot hold two contradictory identities at the same time. Eventually, the new state wins because you keep returning to it with quiet certainty. The moment the state begins to feel natural, something profound happens inside you. You stop trying. You stop wondering when the manifestation will appear. You stop checking the outer world for proof. Instead, you begin to move through each day with a sense of calm familiarity, as though the desire is no longer a desire but a fact. This naturalness is the real sign of success. When the inner shift feels complete, the outer world must obey. But the naturalness does not appear instantly. It is cultivated through repeated occupancy of the state. You return to it morning after morning, night after night, until the feeling of fulfillment becomes the baseline of your inner life. Persistence removes anxiety because it eliminates the illusion of waiting. When you persist, you stop depending on outcomes to validate your assumption. You no longer need the world to reassure you. You begin to understand that the world is not the cause, it is the effect. The cause is the state you dwell in, and persistence ensures that the cause remains steady. When the cause is consistent, the effect becomes inevitable. You do not need to chase signs, symbols, or synchronicities. Your persistence is the only guarantee you need. You may notice over time that the desired state becomes easier to enter. This is a sign of integration. The subconscious is beginning to accept your new assumption as real. What used to feel like imagination now feels like memory, like something you already lived. You are no longer affirming a future. You are embodying a completed fact. And because the inner world feels finished, the outer world begins organizing itself to reflect that completion. People move, circumstances shift, opportunities align, and everything starts to fall into place in ways you could not have orchestrated consciously. But none of this happens without persistence, because persistence is what tells the subconscious, this is who I am now. Many individuals sabotage their manifestation by constantly checking for results. This checking reveals that they do not yet believe. They are looking outward for confirmation of a state they have not fully assumed inwardly. But when you persist, you don't check. You don't ask when or how. You don't analyze the timing. You rest in the feeling of fulfillment. You hold the state lightly, steadily, naturally, until it becomes the only reality that matters. The outer world becomes irrelevant until it catches up, and it always does. Persistence is not a battle. It is not force. It is not a struggle against doubt. It is the gentle returning to your chosen state whenever you drift. Drifting is not failure. Returning is mastery. The more you return, the more familiar the state becomes. Familiarity becomes naturalness. Naturalness becomes embodiment, and embodiment becomes manifestation. When the state becomes natural, your behavior shifts without effort. You speak differently. You expect differently. You make decisions from a place of inner wealth, not insecurity. You move through the world with a quiet confidence that others feel even if they cannot explain it. This shift in energy draws opportunities toward you. It positions you for the outcomes you have already claimed inwardly. You no longer feel separate from your desire. You feel united with it, merged with it, inseparable from it. That is the true power of persistence. It transforms a desire from something you want into something you are. And once you become the state, the outer world must reflect it. Reality has no choice. It must comply with the identity you consistently occupy. The world bends to the assumption that has become natural, and the manifestation arrives, not as a surprise, but as the fulfillment of what you have already been living internally. You knew it was coming because you had already arrived there within. Detach from the mechanics of manifestation, because the moment you begin obsessing over how something will happen, you step out of the creative state and into the state of doubt. The power that shapes your reality is not activated by micromanaging the path, but by assuming the end with unwavering conviction. When you attempt to control the sequence of events, you anchor yourself in limitation and interfere with the natural unfolding that could have delivered the result with far more elegance and speed than anything you could have orchestrated through willpower alone. The bridge of events that leads to your desired financial outcome is constructed the instant you accept the fulfillment. Your inner acceptance sets forces in motion that rearrange circumstances, connect people, align opportunities, and shift conditions that you may not even be aware of. You are not meant to engineer the steps. You are meant to occupy the state of completion and let the steps emerge organically. The mind that tries to figure out the path is the mind that has not yet believed in the outcome. When you truly accept the end, the need to manipulate the middle dissolves. You begin to trust the invisible process that operates beneath the surface of your daily life. Ideas arrive in moments of stillness, invitations appear unexpectedly, and random conversations carry the next piece of the puzzle. The path reveals itself through inspiration, not pressure. When you detach from the how, you open the door for the most efficient, surprising, and accelerated route to unfold. Money comes from places you never considered, people you never anticipated, and timing you could not have designed. Your role is to maintain the inner image of completion so clearly that life must rearrange itself to match it. This detachment is not passivity, it is mastery. It is the discipline of trusting the unseen more than the seen. It is the quiet confidence of knowing that once the inner shift occurs, the outer world cannot resist conforming. You become a receiver of inspired action rather than a chaser of forced effort. Action taken from inspiration is swift, direct, and impactful. It carries a momentum that propels you forward. Action taken from worry is fragmented and ineffective. Inspired action is the natural expression of the assumed state, and you will know it when it arrives because it feels obvious, compelling, and aligned. You will not have to push yourself into it, you will feel pulled toward it. When you detach from the how, life begins to weave details together in the background. Every person you meet, every conversation you overhear, every challenge that redirects you, and every opportunity that appears is part of the invisible strategy being executed on your behalf. You may not recognize the pattern while it is forming, but you will see the symmetry once the manifestation arrives. Many individuals look back and realize the entire sequence was perfect, even though it made little sense at the time. This is the power of allowing life to orchestrate what the rational mind could never conceive. Money often arrives in ways that defy logic, because the logic that limits you is not the logic that governs creation. You are dealing with a principle that responds to assumption, not analysis. The more you analyze, the more you entangle yourself in the very limitations you are trying to escape. Release the need to strategize every detail. Release the need to predict every outcome. Your assumption contains the pattern for fulfillment, and fulfillment is encoded in that state like a seed holding an entire tree. You do not need to know how the seed becomes the tree, you only need to plant it and trust its nature. The bridge of events will always be revealed step by step, never all at once. This is intentional. If you were shown the entire sequence, you would attempt to interfere, correct, or improve it. Life gives you what you need in the moment you need it. The moment you accept the end, the bridge becomes active. The moment you question the end, the bridge becomes unstable. That is why detachment is essential. It keeps the bridge intact and allows the current of manifestation to flow without obstruction. Opportunities begin to stand out in ways you did not notice before. Conversations feel significant. Ideas feel urgent. Paths that were invisible suddenly become clear. Money begins to show up through discounts, gifts, refunds, offers, referrals, partnerships, and completely unexpected sources. You may receive a message that shifts everything, a chance encounter that opens a door, or an intuitive nudge that leads to a breakthrough. These movements are not random, they are responses to your assumed state. Detachment is ultimately the recognition that you are not the limited self who must push, strain, or struggle to produce results. You are the one who selects the outcome and lets life mirror it in its own way. You do not chase, you attract. You do not demand, you allow. You do not struggle, you receive. The less you interfere, the faster the manifestation arrives, because you are no longer contradicting it with fear, doubt, or impatience. You maintain the end, feel its reality, and trust that everything required is already on its way. Remain loyal to the result, not the route. The route will always surprise you. The result is already established the moment you claim it. The how is none of your concern, because the how is handled by the principle that turns unseen assumptions into visible experiences. Your only work is to sustain the inner knowing until the outer proof appears. And when it does, you will see that life had been aligning the pieces long before you understood the picture they were forming. Acting from the state means you are no longer trying to get somewhere. You are expressing where you already are within yourself. This inner shift is subtle yet transformative. When you truly assume the consciousness of wealth, your actions stop feeling like attempts to reach a goal and start becoming natural extensions of your identity. You are no longer taking steps to become wealthy. You are behaving as someone who is already established, already supported, already certain. This shift dissolves desperation and replaces it with decisiveness. You move differently because you think differently, and you think differently because you feel differently. The entire quality of your behavior changes when you act from the end. When you operate from fullness, you stop chasing opportunities and begin selecting them. You no longer ask, will this work? But instead, does this align with who I am now? Scarcity-driven action is frantic, impatient, and fueled by fear. It pressures you to force outcomes, scramble for answers, and worry about every detail. But action arising from the state of abundance is measured, confident, and infused with clarity. You feel no urgency to prove anything because the result is already assumed. This internal calm translates into external authority. People can feel when someone is coming from a place of certainty, and they respond to it with trust. You appear more grounded, more capable, and more aligned because you are no longer performing. You are simply expressing a truth your inner world has already accepted. When you act from the state, your choices become more intelligent because they are not clouded by anxiety or self-doubt. You take inspired actions, not forced ones. Inspired action is effortless. It does not feel like labor or strain. It feels like flow. Ideas come easily, and you recognize them instantly because they resonate with the state you occupy. You take steps that feel natural, inevitable, steps that move you forward without resistance. This is because your actions are not designed to make something happen. They are responses to something that, in your consciousness, has already happened. You are moving within the momentum of your assumption, rather than trying to create the momentum yourself. Acting from the state also changes how you interact with others. When you embody wealth inwardly, your tone shifts. Your presence becomes more influential. You communicate with a quiet strength that does not require explanation or persuasion. People sense that you are not trying to get anything from them. You do not appear needy or dependent. Instead, you bring value, clarity, and direction because you are speaking from a place of internal sufficiency. This alone attracts opportunities. Individuals and organizations naturally gravitate toward those who project confidence and stability. They trust your decisions, they respect your time, and they offer resources more readily because your demeanor signals that you are already a person of importance and capability. When you act from this state of abundance, you release the fear of mistakes. You understand that the path is unfolding through you and that every action contributes to the manifestation of your assumption. Instead of second guessing yourself or hesitating, you move forward with assurance. Even if you make choices that seem imperfect in the moment, you trust that the overall trajectory is supported by your inner belief. This trust neutralizes fear and accelerates results. You no longer waste energy on doubt. You use that energy to move with purpose. Acting from the state transforms your relationship with time. When you are trying to reach wealth, time feels like an obstacle. You worry about deadlines, pacing, delays, and progress. But when you already feel wealthy within, time becomes irrelevant. You no longer rush, you no longer push. You understand that the world is arranging itself to match your inner assumption, and this understanding gives you patience without passivity. You take action when moved by clarity, not pressure. This creates a rhythm where your steps are perfectly timed, and opportunities seem to appear exactly when needed. Another powerful shift occurs in how you handle challenges. When you act toward wealth, problems feel threatening because they seem capable of derailing your progress. But when you act from wealth, obstacles lose their emotional weight. You see them as temporary appearances, not as indicators of failure. You approach them with creativity rather than panic. The state you occupy dictates how you interpret everything, and when your state is rooted in abundance, even setbacks become stepping stones that carry you forward. Acting from the state cultivates a self-image that naturally attracts prosperity. You begin to treat yourself differently. You make decisions that honor your worth. You set higher standards. You no longer tolerate situations, environments, or relationships that contradict your assumed identity. This refinement of self automatically refines your world. You attract people who match your new level of consciousness. You draw opportunities that correspond to your sense of value. You magnetize experiences that align with your inner assumption of being wealthy, capable, and chosen. Ultimately, acting from the state is not about doing more. It is about doing from a different foundation. It is about letting your inner conviction set the tone for every outward step. The world reflects what you are being, not what you are trying to become. When your actions rise from the inner assurance that the outcome is guaranteed, you move with a power that the world cannot ignore. You stand in the energy of completion, and everything around you begins to reorganize itself to support that completion. This is how inner certainty becomes outer manifestation. This is how the state you assume becomes the life you live. Expect the shift in your outer world, because once the inner state has changed, the external reality is compelled to rearrange itself. Life cannot ignore a consciousness that has taken on a new identity. When you have assumed a state of financial abundance so deeply that it feels like your natural home, your world begins to move in response. At first, the changes may appear subtle, almost easy to miss if you are not attentive. A conversation that opens a door, a message from someone you have not heard from in years, an opportunity that seems to appear without effort. These moments are not coincidences. They are signals that the formula you activated within is now reshaping the field around you. The reason these external shifts begin quietly is that the world must reflect your new assumption in the most seamless and organic way possible. Reality does not bring a dramatic transformation all at once. It begins by adjusting the small elements that lead to larger outcomes. You may find yourself guided to take a certain action or reach out to someone without knowing why. You may feel a sudden burst of clarity that pushes you toward a decision you have hesitated to make. These impulses are not random. They are part of the unfolding bridge of events designed to carry you from your previous state into the new consciousness you have adopted. The key is to watch the outer world with awareness, not impatience. Impatience is a sign that you have not fully accepted the state. Awareness, however, is the recognition that reality is bending around your new assumption, and you are simply observing how the pieces move into place. When you hold the end state with confidence, you no longer question each occurrence. Instead, you recognize that everything, whether it appears positive or neutral, is part of the orchestration that leads to the fulfillment of your desire. As you maintain your assumption, the small shifts begin to accumulate. You might notice people treating you differently, responding to you with more interest or respect. You may observe that you attract conversations related to money, business, creativity, or expansion far more frequently. Ideas that once felt distant begin arriving with clarity, and these ideas carry the kind of energy that propels you forward effortlessly. The flow of life starts to match the inner abundance you have already claimed. Unexpected income is often one of the earliest signs of this shift. It may come through a refund, a gift, a new client, a delayed payment finally arriving, or a spontaneous business opportunity. The form does not matter. What matters is the recognition that the inner assumption has begun creating a new pattern of financial movement in your life. Every small arrival of money is a confirmation that you have taken command of your inner world and the outer world is obeying. Momentum increases as the assumption stabilizes. At first, the results may appear sporadic, but over time they become consistent. You begin to feel as though you are no longer pushing toward money. Instead, money is flowing toward you. This shift in dynamic is the clearest evidence that the formula is active. The world is responding to the version of yourself who already possesses what you desire. You are no longer striving to become wealthy. You are expressing the wealth that already exists within your consciousness. At this stage, many people make the mistake of questioning the process, doubting the results, or looking for signs too eagerly. This weakens the assumption because it suggests that the state has not become natural. The correct response is calm acknowledgement. When you see a shift, no matter how small, accept it as proof of alignment. When you encounter a delay, view it as part of the unseen construction of your desire. When you feel an inner impulse, follow it without overthinking. Trust is the force that carries the assumption into full manifestation. As the process continues, the changes become more dramatic and undeniable. Opportunities that once seemed impossible begin appearing as if they were always meant for you. People enter your life with resources, connections, or ideas that accelerate your progress. You find yourself at the right place at the right time, saying the right words, meeting the right individuals, because the outer world is now synchronized with the wealth-conscious identity you embody. Eventually, the manifestation becomes so visible and so aligned that you no longer think of it as a manifestation. It becomes the natural expression of your world. The inner shift has completed its work, and the outer world has reorganized itself to match it. What began as subtle signals has expanded into a life pattern of abundance, growth, and financial ease. The formula does not produce one isolated result. It produces a permanent transformation of your relationship with money. By maintaining your assumption and observing the unfolding without interference, you allow the process to complete itself in the most elegant way possible. The small shifts lead to larger shifts, and those larger shifts build into undeniable results. Your external life becomes a mirror that faithfully reflects the wealth you claimed within.